Today I'm going to continue on with the theme of the cube. Using a pen today, a Uni Pin Fine Line. This is a 0.3. It's quite a good sketchy pen, I find. So from the last video, I was concentrating perhaps just about getting confidence when you sketch. And in this instance, it was about how we can move our paper around on our workspace so that we feel more confident when we draw these lines. Now, putting that to one side for a minute, the actual construction box, if this is what this ultimately will be, has to follow a couple of rules of thumb, perhaps, if it's for a product design sketch. And one of them may be that the perspective is not too distorted. So if I put a line across here, you will see that the angle here is roughly 30 degrees, and it's a pretty good angle to have for a sort of perspective box. The alignment itself is fairly equal, so this face here and this face here we're sort of equally seeing, and again, dependent on the actual shape we want to portray, then it may be important to see one face more so than the other. But in this case, in this sort of like cube form, it's probably a nice way of being able to communicate three faces in quite a visual way. That is not to say that I can't rotate my shape. So one way of rotating the cube would be really just determining which axis I'm going to rotate it on. Now, if I draw my top face again, and maybe this time I sort of move it round, then you can already see that what I've done here now is I've rotated the cube. And if I continue now to draw those lines going straight down, let's just do that quite quickly. Again, let's shadow that line. Move my piece of paper around to help me with this, and again probably draw the inside of the shape as well, and then finally that top bit, doesn't matter if it's slightly a little bit out. Okay, and you can see now that this shape's actually showing that face much more so than it's showing the side face. So students often ask me how I can so consistently sketch my shapes and without too much care and attention be fairly consistent with them looking like they are forms in perspective. And I think the key is to just follow that simple sort of process. So what you'll see with this cube here is these little lines here are sort of representing parallel lines, okay? And what I'm trying to do when I sketch minimally to sort of make this look like it's not out of perspective is to make these lines here sort of parallel to each other. Now we know obviously that the rules of perspective are such that there is a slight distortion, and as such, vanishing points on sketches should, if I was to do it through the traditional methods of 2-point perspective, mean that this face here is actually slightly getting shortened here and will eventually vanish away until nothing. Now the reality is when I want to actually sketch a construction form for a product design sketch, that can be quite minimal. There is an example where if I'm not careful and I don't follow this sort of system, that my object might look out of perspective. Let me just see if I can draw an out of perspective shape, and this might be where I'm sort of losing sight because perhaps I'm not focusing so much on the particular lines and whether they're actually looking like they're actually sort of parallel with each other. So you can see on a couple of occasions on this form, I've actually fallen away from that. And that's mostly because what I'm not doing is I'm probably not shadowing that line, and I'm not actually making sure that when I sketch that next line that it's actually got an alignment to the face that it's relevant to. It's easy to sort of fall out of it. I'm not saying that the analogy is similar to sort of riding a bicycle, but in a way, once you sort of get used to that process, it's then very difficult to sort of sketch out of perspective. So again, if I just use a little bit of paper here, again, I'm just going to rotate this one slightly differently and maybe look down on it a bit more so we can see much more of that face there. Again, the reality might be that because I'm seeing a little bit more face here, that I might actually then need to think of a little bit of foreshortening, okay? Otherwise that's not going to look like a cube. So again, this is where I might critically reflect here. But first and foremost, this line here, I want to make sure that I'm actually following that. And again, with the next line, I'm hitting the tripod there slightly. Again, following that. So you can see here, that again, I'm sort of consistently maintaining this sort of perspective look, and it's mostly one step at a time, making sure that these lines are parallel.